Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Women in Tech here at Momentum Metropolitan. We have a very exciting lineup here for you today, where we are going to discuss how women are building a digital tomorrow. So we're really happy to have all of you join us here. So I think a lot of you are probably asking, why is a male presenting and emceeing the Women in Tech event? So just some background and context for you. So I actually helped to start this initiative within Momentum Metropolitan, and it's been a pleasure to see it grow without this time. I do consider myself an ally for women and youngsters in the technology industry. So it's an absolute pleasure to be with you here today and to take this conversation a little bit further with you. So our theme is around females building a digital future for us. And I think we can all agree that COVID has radically shifted us into that digital future, where we all now using digital to do all of our banking, all of our shopping is online now, and Black Friday is looming. So I think we're all benefiting from some of those features. And there's some exciting new developments happening in this sphere as well, with the metaverse launching from Facebook and much, much more. So that is definitely going to be the future. But the key question is really, how do we build parity and inclusion in that digital tomorrow that we are building for everybody? So just a few ground rules that I would like to run over before we get started in this event. We really want this to be participative. We want to hear from you, what you're thinking as well throughout. So there is a chat function, so please engage with us. It's sometimes daunting to speak into a blank universe and you don't know if anybody's actually laughing at your joke or if they're getting what you're meaning. So please engage with us and just let us know that you're following us throughout this time. We really do appreciate it. And then secondly, there is a Q&A function as well. So please drop in your questions there for the panelists. We really have some heavy hitters here with us today as females that are really experts in the digital world and building digital offerings. So please do make use of that Q&A function to engage with them and get some of your questions answered. There are also some competition questions that will be launched in each of the speaker sessions. So that is really exciting because the prize is actually the most precious thing in the world. Time with these dynamic females who will be coaching you for half an hour or maybe a little bit more if you can twist their arm to just go through some of your questions and how they can maybe help you in your career, in your digital projects, and maybe just learning more about the digital world as well. So please look out for that. And then lastly, engage with us on social media as well. So we want to hear from you and we want to have you help us spread the gospel of our initiative here. So our hashtags are, and I'm going to say them slowly, is Mom Met Women in Motion. So again, that's Mom Met Women in Motion. And then secondly, Success Together. Since I am a male presenting a Women in Tech event, it's about us all celebrating each other's successes. So I am really so excited and so honored to introduce a momentum maker within our own stable now. So Devi Moodley is joining us. So she is the CIO of Momentum Money. She is also somebody that is really grown through the ranks of the tech industry. And I'll give you a bit of an overview of her very impressive background and pedigree. So her speech with us is going to be on how to stay relevant in a fast-moving technology environment. So Devi has a career that has a very wide span. She started as a control and instrumentation engineer in the energy sector, and then as an enterprise architect, a management consultant. Then she moved up as an executive for cloud and DevOps technologies, as been a CIO, and currently she is CIO for Momentum Money, right here within us in Momentum Metropolitan. Cool. So Devi, I'm going to hand over to you and give you a little bit of an introduction.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Eugene, for the opportunity. It is such a privilege and an honor to be on this platform today and to talk about women in technology, a topic that I'm very passionate about, a topic that I believe is very important in society today. I want to share a very personal learning journey with you today. And yes, let's get with it. Let's start. So, sorry. I started my career, as Eugene said, as a control and instrumentation engineer at a power station out in the Bundus in Mpumalanga. Until 6 years ago, I actually thought the biggest battle I had to fight was actually gaining access to the 115-meter level of a power station. It's that very, very top level that did not actually have toilets for females, and you had to like run down and go to the office block and time your pee breaks. But that challenge is actually so minuscule, and it was like child's play compared to the challenges I currently face, which is remaining relevant in a digitally disruptive environment. Technology disruption has resulted in an exponential growth in technology, and it's an exponential increase. The challenge we face today is how do you grasp these new technologies early enough to bring in a competitive advantage and to improve your business, while at the same time juggling meeting the demands of the multiple roles that we play as women in society. I learned these lessons on coping in the most unexpected place I could think of. As children grow, they kind of don't want to bond with you and don't want to be hugged. And about 8 years ago, I had this need to bond with my growing children. In our house, board games started becoming a contact sport, so that wasn't the best place to bond. And then I thought of doing a physical activity. And so the thought of karate came across my mind. Unfortunately, that didn't quite work out as I planned. My son thought it was ridiculously lame to do karate with his parents. He found spending time with his grandmother, undisturbed by his sister, for 3 hours a week was far more beneficial. My daughter is now 16 and completely despises the fact that she is the only teenager that has to do karate with her parents. And, you know, it was very much like the failure of the glue that 3M invented that actually resulted in the phenomenal launch of the Post-it. The initial failure of my intent actually ended up in a wonderful personal journey of growth and education from a personal perspective and a professional perspective. You know, I think the first thing was I've been able to accept my limitations, and I'll say gracefully within inverted commas, while thoroughly enjoying the sport. And today, I actually want to take this opportunity to share the parallels that I have found in the ancient discipline of martial arts and navigating relevance to digital disruption. So, in the video that you are going to see, I want you to please pay particular attention to the power of the kick and where the power is actually driven from. So you will notice the athletes compressing using hip rotation and the actual speed of the entire body. And the kick is only released right at the very end. Okay, so Laura is not somebody you mess with. She actually has her third Dan black belt. So as a woman, you have unique qualities that come naturally to you. These are things like empathy, nurturing, planning, and they're just to name a few. When you bring yourself to the table and you bring all of these qualities to the table, you actually deliver a far stronger solution. Bringing these qualities of empathy into the digital world enables you to start looking at the product from a customer's perspective. And, digital transformation at its core is about the customer and the customer's experience. So building a digital solution with empathy to the customer is really key to your success. Always focus on the value add to the consumer. As techies, we just love tech. We love the features, we love the technology, we love the functions. But if you are not bringing components of understanding the consumer, you will not be able to use these features and these functions to actually deliver the value that the customer wants. All the customer wants from your solution is that your solution adds value to them, not how cool the tech really is. And, the further away that you are from your customer, the less you actually understand how these technologies can actually deliver this value to them. So as women, let us bring our entire selves to the party so that our solution really can kick the market at the end of the day. Bringing who you are, bringing your empathy, bringing your nurturing skills in delivers a far better solution. As women, we're often afraid to bring these softer characteristics that we have to the table. But it is what makes us unique. And in this new world, it is these qualities that actually sets us apart and enables our organizations to actually step forward and move forward with great momentum. So being authentic, being decisive, and failing fast, these are all catchphrases. So what do they practically mean? In a complex digital world, trying to predict, control, and eliminate variances is almost impossible. You need to suppress this need for perfection, because actually iterating on a solution is actually far, far more effective. Things are changing and constantly changing and changing at pace. So the speed of your execution and your decisive decision making really is a lot more important than perfection. If you take an imperfect decision fast, it is far more valuable than being stagnant and not making a decision and not going to the market. Make things good enough. Be wary of trying to perfect a solution or a product, as the solution would actually become irrelevant because the market has actually moved on. enjoy. And as leaders, I think it is really, really important that we ensure that we create an environment that tolerates and actually embraces failure. You can actually have rapid feedback loops that you create in your environment that accelerates the learning for yourself and for your team. Sorry, just a bit of technical difficulty. There we go. In this next video, what I want you to look at is how each person responds at rapid speed to each other's movements. Now, that is actually training, in karate, that's training your reflexes. But it is not something that you just wake up and get. You really have to train. You have to continuously learn. You have to continuously adapt to your opponent and be able to adapt quickly to your opponent. So in the 1900s, and note it is the 1900s, that Charles Darwin actually said this. It is not the strongest of species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. The digital world is fast changing and constantly changing and very rapid paced. To remain relevant, one needs to constantly adapt. And the skill to be able to rethink your previous position is really, really important. So let's do a poll now. Okay. A quote from Steve Jobs, it says, "Why would we want to do that?" Jobs snapped. "That is the dumbest idea I've ever heard." Which Apple product did Steve Jobs refer to? Was it the iPod, the MacBook, the iPhone, or the iPad? Okay. The correct answer is actually the iPhone. So this was Steve Jobs' response to a pitch of turning his hit product, the iPod, into a phone. Steve Jobs hated cell phone companies, but the Apple engineers had the foresight of recognizing that mobile phones were actually starting to have feature the ability to play music. So Steve Jobs' objection to this entire thing, how do you today actually, if you're an Apple slave like me, hold an iPhone in your hand? So we all know, and we know that Jobs had the ability to think differently, but his engineers also had the incredible ability to rethink their positions and also be able to articulate their rethinking and take people along the journey with them of this reevaluation of your perceptions and your ideas and concepts. And it is that ability of rethinking and repositioning your mindset that enabled Apple through the iPhone and various other products to actually regain relevance in the market. And we all know that that inability was the major downfall of BlackBerry. Adam Grant has written a new book called Think Again. It's the power of knowing what you don't know. And it's about this very concept, and I don't believe I can do enough justice to this topic as he does. So I strongly suggest do it. It's good, light reading, and it also gives you the tools that you require that will enable you to develop this ability to rethink. I think, just a takeout from this is, if we can just today take away certain phrases and vocabulary that we constantly use, things like, this will never work here, that's not what my experience has shown, that's too complicated, don't overthink it, and my pet hate. That's the way we've always done it. So if we, I think the first step, let's start taking these things out of our vocabulary. Let's open our minds. But also remember that, a key factor to rethinking and adapting is constantly learning and turning yourself into a lifelong learner. You need to develop this ability to learn, and that will enable you to adapt at speed, whether it's learning a new coding language, a new concept, or a new methodology that you're bringing into the business. Just constantly learn, enjoy it, delve into it, gain a hunger for learning. I think the other, sorry. Can we please go to the previous slide? I double clicked. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think the other key lesson is a black belt is a white belt that never gave up. History has shown us that as women, we have the strength and the tenacity to overcome
Okay, it seems like we have a little bit of a freeze on Devi's side, but I think she was almost at the end of her presentation. But I think there were some really exciting takeouts there. You back, Devi?
I am back. I am so sorry.
No worries. So, I think I was just saying that you really had some impactful insights there, and you were just in your final punch. So, please,
I was in my
please continue. Punch. Please continue.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think as women, we just have so much more resources at our disposal to actually be able to do this. I think we do have to, as Indra Nooyi says, she's the ex-CEO of PepsiCo, suppress your perfection gene. And that is something that as women, I think we do have this tendency to be absolutely perfect. But we have the strength, we have the tenacity, we have so much more at our disposal today to really, truly go out there and make a phenomenal difference in this digital world. And I'd really like to thank each and every one of you for listening to me. And I hope I've been able to, in sharing this personal journey, I've given you some insight into me and into what I use to actually help me a little bit. And I think learning is something that you can never underestimate, no matter what age you actually are. I'd also like to give special thanks to my karate school for the videos and that they've allowed us to use, and the permission that the students have given me to use their photos. Thank you very much.
Awesome, awesome. So I would just like to recap a little bit there, Devi. So I think two key takeaways that I have from your presentation is that you need to be able to deliver value and bring your full self to the party, irrespective, so for our female audience members, but I think it applies across. And I think in a digital world, with that pace that at which new digital offerings come up and the pace at which the market shifts is really valuable. And then I think that full self includes your empathy, your humanity. So I think those are really valuable like takeaways for us. And lastly for me was that imperfect decisions is better than a perfect slower decision. And getting to that market fast and getting things out there in the market that is good enough is good for now.
And once again, you learn from your failures.
Sure. Fail fast, but fail forward.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So thank you so much. I see we haven't gotten any questions and answers yet, and I'm watching it like a hawk. So please engage with us as we go through this. We are looking for those questions. Devi, you also have a quiz. So I want to just hand over to you to ask that question to the audience members so they can get the most valuable resource, which is your time, and get to know you a little bit personally one-on-one as well.
Cool. So Lynn Conway is a person that has overcome great prejudice and adversity through her career. The concept of a very large-scale integrated microchip design is the reason you have your smartphone today. And the question is, did Lynn Conway revolutionize microchip design?
Let's see if the responses come in. So we have a positive yes. I think fastest thinker first was Monique JBR. Monique? So Monique will reach out to you and engage with you so that you are going to be able to have a little bit of a one-on-one Zoom session or team session with Devi. And so I think you're going to enjoy that conversation.
Great stuff. Please go and read about her. It's a very enriching story. Thank you.
Will do. Okay, awesome. Okay, so now we are going to move on to our second speaker, and I have with me here Jemima Kariuki, all the way from Nairobi. So we are very fortunate to have you here, and I think this is also our first Pan-African discussion for Women in Tech at Momentum Metropolitan. So we are really happy to have you here, Jemima. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
An absolute pleasure. So I do want to give a little bit of an overview of your credentials and your background as well. And I think your experience ties in so brilliantly with our theme today around females building a digital future. So Jemima actually is a seasoned payments specialist. So her passion is really around financial inclusion. So over the last 13 years, she has built digital offerings and mobile products all the way through all the life cycle, from ideation, designing them, developing them, doing the testing, and then going to market. So she really can tell us around what that is like. She's currently the director at MasterCard's Labs for Financial Inclusion, and her focus is really on building products that helps the underserved communities in the African continent and abroad. She previously was with Visa as a digital a director for digital products, and previously before that at Bharti Airtel as well in various roles. So I think you can really give us a keen insight on how females can build a digital future for us and what role they can play as well. So I am going to hand over to you and let you take us on a wonderful journey.
Great, thanks, Eugene. So yes, as Eugene mentioned, I am particularly passionate about financial inclusion. So what you'll notice is that we'll speak about financial inclusion products, but you can really translate them to any digital product that's out there. Some of the learnings that we picked up along the way can really easily be translated in any other type of product. Important to mention that MasterCard Labs is part of the MasterCard group. We're just like the fintech arm of it. And why MasterCard felt the need to introduce the lab, which we're now calling the Foundry, is because there's so much change in technology. And if you don't, keep your eyes, ears on the ground, it's very easy for you to lose focus. And as MasterCard, perhaps we'll continue selling cards over, until that point where we become a Kodak, and that's not what we want. So it was important for us to set up this separate arm of MasterCard that sort of keeps the company up to date with what's happening out there, what are the problems that are out there, and how do you solve for those problems using technology. So yes, going right into it, the conversation today is very interesting, and it's interesting to me because I truly believe if women are not represented, the kind of products that come out will not be inclusive, right? And these are learnings that we've picked up along the way in some of the products that I'll talk about. And in the beginning, and these are just facts you can pick out, we are really already on the back foot. We're already disadvantaged. So if you look at some of the facts that are out there, a third of the developing countries' laws do not guarantee same rights for women as men, which is very sad. 1 out of 3 women from developing regions has no control over household spending. And this will see how if you change the form factor, you can actually have, and you'll see it in a few minutes, how if you change the form factor, you can actually include the woman in this kind of decisions. And then 1 out of 10 women need to consult over their own earning, over how their own earning is spent. And then lastly, women own only 1% of property and only 10% of total income. With the fourth one as well, you'll be able to see how it impacts things like agriculture, particularly on the element of inheritance and the inheritance laws that are out there. So let's talk about agri a little bit. We as MasterCard came up with a product a couple of years ago that's called Farm Pass. And it's basically an aggregated solution that sort of tries to put together all the different value chains. They're very segregated at the moment, where you have a farmer on one hand who grows their crops. The first thing they need is obviously the inputs. So think of seeds, think of fertilizer, pesticides. And then you've got an agent in between, which we call the Farmers Producers Organization, FPOs, who are basically the ones who connect them to the factories, right? So after the factory, then you have the manufacturing, party, and then you've got us, you and I, who consume the product. So it's a very segregated value chain. And what we did here is that we built a way in which you can actually, as a farmer, be connected to the end consumer. You'll be able to actually know how much your produce should be able to fetch in the market. So we try to build a product that makes sense for the farmer and gives them visibility of who consumes the product at the end of it. So this is a product that we rolled out in different markets. So it's currently in Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, as well as India. And to be honest, it wasn't built by design for women, right? But what we realize is that there are ways we could fix it along the way. And as Devi mentioned, you go to market, you learn, you iterate. There's never a time where you have a perfect product. So when we went to market, it wasn't built by design for women, but there are things we're picking up along the way that could actually help it have a bigger impact on women. So the first thing we picked out is the form factor. And by form factor here, I mean, how do you bring it to the farmer themselves? So what we chose was a mobile phone, which obviously made a lot of sense, with the penetration of mobile phone in our part of the world. It made total sense to go with that as the form factor. But then what we realized that most households, it's the husband that actually has the mobile phone and not so much the wife. So every household would have one phone and it's held by the husband. Yet 80% of the people who are actually laboring, the laborers, are women, right? The ones who are tilling the farms, the ones who are, managing the farm entirely, those are women. So already we had excluded the women from this beautiful solution that we built out. So it's very important that you figure out prior to even launching, or even along, after launching, how do you reach the people that you intend to reach, right? Is it a mobile phone, or do you start thinking about other ways? Like in our instance, what we've had to do is think of an offline way of communicating with this woman. So what we're currently looking at launching is an offline card, which using biometrics at any store, merchant, at the nearest store available for the woman, she'd be able to come in, get information about her produce, get money as well, make payments. So using her biometrics, that's how she deals with it. And this is something that we're going to test and see whether it actually works out for them. So that's one key area which we noticed. And you'll see this is actually something that also translates into education as well as SMEs. So it's not just in agriculture where you can miss the mark just by the choice of form factor. The other thing that we also noticed is a need to profile, right? So when you think of farmers, you can just put them as a segment and say, okay, I'm targeting farmers, but you've got to go that extra step and say, who is the farmer, right? Is it a woman or a man? Are you able to profile them at that point in time, at the point of registration? Because what that does is that it gives you even better data for you to make certain changes or decisions or iterations on the product. So if you can try and collect gender data at the point of enrollment, that will quickly show you along the way as you're reading the data that this is how a man would utilize your solution and this is how a woman would utilize your solution. Or perhaps I'm getting less women because of certain features that I have that don't make sense for the woman. How do I change that along the way? The other key point is strategic partnerships. So this is an interesting one that we learned in Uganda particularly. So in Uganda, when we rolled out this product, we noticed that there was a really high intake and uptake of it. So there's enrollment records were particularly quite high, activity records were also quite high. And we wanted to understand what's so peculiar about Uganda compared to Tanzania, Kenya, and India. And what we found out is that the partners, so what we're calling the FPOs, the Farmers Producers Organization, who are really the ones taking this product to the market, most of them were actually women-led, right? And when you have such partners, I think there's just extra, and I'm not trying to say that women are better than men in any way, but truly there was some extra effort, some extra aggressiveness, and really understanding the product and what change it could have on the impact that it could have on them that led them to just continuously go out there, sell this product, get people enrolled, get the farmers active. I particularly feel like they were also going after the women who are the actual laborers. So as MasterCard, it's important for us to then look back and say, okay, how do we make strategic partnerships? How do we ensure that we can get not only just men who are FPOs, but also women-led FPOs? Then the last one here, which was a really interesting learning across board, was the type of crops that we were going after. So primarily, and this is mainly because of like the portion of land that men own, you'd find that there are certain crops that are male dominant. So for example, coffee, cereals, and by cereals, I mean maize, beans, those are primarily male dominated crops. And then you have the female ones, which are more vegetables. And it changes a little bit in India, where you have the male dominated crops such as spices and fruits. So those are mainly grown by men, and it's only because of the piece of land that they possibly have to grow it. So again, if you're truly looking to include women in your solution, then you have to make sure that you're also solving or talking to the right or targeting the right crop, right? So nothing, stops us from saying, okay, because we're going this direction with maize and beans, we could also include vegetables, which then allows us to then include more women in the conversation and in the solution. So these are just some of the key learnings that we picked up along the way in agriculture. I want to just move quickly to education, and I don't know if we can run the poll here before I go through this. The third question. Great. So I'd love to hear from you on this particular question on education. Which gender is likely to be pulled out of school if there was a shortage of school fees? And these are things that we picked up along the way. It would be great to see, if there's biasness or if there's some kind of knowledge around this. Yeah, it's quite sad because I guess we're living in this part of the world. Absolutely, it's a girl child. So what we noticed with the solution that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes is that whenever a household would have a shortage of school fees for whatever reason, whether they're farmers and that season they're not able to make enough money, or whether someone has lost their job along the way, it's always the first thought. It doesn't matter whether the girl is the one performing well or whether the girl is older and perhaps is, at a later stage in her schooling. It really doesn't matter. It's almost obvious that they're going to pull the girl out. And this is data that we were picking up from a solution that we launched as well in Uganda and Kenya called Kupa. And this solution, what we were trying to do with it is digitize schools. So you'll notice in most underserved markets, you'll find that most schools, especially the low-income, low-cost schools, would have a lot of paperwork. So if you think about enrollment, it's all on paper. If you think about payments, it's cash-based and all on paper. I, as a parent, I would have to go to the school, make the payment, and then be given a receipt. So it's all on paper. So what we were trying to do is eliminate that paper, but at the same time, learn from the data. So again, pulling this data in, it became apparent to us that because part of the solution also had an attendance in which a teacher would be able to capture attendance of the students. What we noticed along the way is that the girl child, I mean, at a lower level, you'd have them. Then as you go along and, going into the upper classes, there's a reduction, right? And then there was also absenteeism based on certain days of the month where the girl wouldn't be able to come to school, and primarily because perhaps they're going through the menstruation period. So the such data was so rapid and so clear, and what we need to do and what we ended up doing with that data is also share it with policymakers so that we can see how can we help the clear disadvantage that the girl child had in schools. So we're working with the likes of World Vision and other policymakers to see how do you step in. So make sure as you're rolling out your solutions that you're picking out such data and doing something about it, learning from the data to support the behavioral change. And then the other thing similar to Agri is making sure that you have strategic partnerships. So again, we noticed that some of the schools we were approaching, especially the low-cost private schools, were owned by women. And that's where we had the best uptake of the solution, like in terms of enrollment, again, as well as activity. And it only made sense because they were actually women-owned. So if truly you want to make an impact, that's the direction that made the most sense, right? And then the thing about digitization of schools is that then there's visibility. With digitization, what it does is that it provides data. This kind of visibility helps the schools, and what we ended up doing is also giving this data to financial institutions who could then come to the school and say, okay, this is how many students you have, this is how much you're collecting in terms of school fees, these are your costs. That does is that a financial institution could come back to the school and say, okay, I could actually give you credit based on this kind of data. And credit obviously means then that school is able to do things that it requires to do and it's also able to grow. So you're basically financially including the schools. And that's very important if you want to make an impact in education. And then lastly, there's the building by design again, which is the form factor. Again, our form factor here was mobile phones. What we noticed, same logic, most of the phone owners would be males. However, it's the females that actually, it's the wives, it's the mothers who actually mostly pay school fees. Right. So, and this goes to the whole, understanding that women have over savings and knowing that, in another 3 months, my kids have to go to school. So being better savers, they're the ones who end up doing the actual payment. So what we are trying to do in this area as well is introduce a way in which if I earn through cash, I could actually put it in my offline card as I wait for it for the payment to be due, my school fees payment to be due. So we're making those changes along the way to make sure that the women have a way in which they could even be the ones to actually make that school fee payment themselves, as opposed to depending on their husbands to do so. And lastly, I'll speak about the SME, and these are small, medium enterprises. In our markets, they're much smaller. So we're talking about micro SMEs. So for this, you want to think about your mom and pop type of shops. We launched a couple of solutions solving for the micro retailer. One particular one was to help them access credit through alternative data, and then coupled by a way in which you can digitize the shop itself. So if you think about some of the shops that perhaps you grew up going to buy things, right? And we're not talking about supermarkets, so think of being in the house and you need salt. So the first place you rush to, I think in South Africa it's called Spazas, and in Kenya we use the term kiosk. Most of these shops don't grow, and if you look at them, most of them are still pen and paper based. Yeah, the most they probably have is mobile money, a way in which they accept payments through mobile money, but it's primarily cash as well. They don't get to grow, and the reason behind that is because they're not digitized. So if a bank wanted to even help that shop owner, the first thing they'd ask is, how much do you make? Do those shops even know how much they make? We did a bit of research in Kenya, and it was quite interesting. We started talking to this shop owners, and most of them said, I have no idea how much I make, and I've been running my shop for years. I think I make profits, but I'm not too sure. So how do you help this shop owner actually get better data from the business that they're running? How do you help them capture, their sales for the day versus yesterday's sales, so that they can see, okay, I'm growing, maybe I'm not growing. How do you help them capture the things they buy from the suppliers? So that's the kind of digitization we were bringing to the table for these SMEs. And as we were going along with the rollout of the product, what we noticed is it's very important to have a clear user interface and user experience, because most shops, again, are owned by men. However, it's their wives who are operating it, or their daughters, right? So if you roll out a solution that doesn't make sense for the person doing the actual work, which is a woman, then you lose them, right? right? So in our scenario, our product was mobile based. It was an app that runs on a smartphone. So we'd give it to the woman, and what we notice is that they fiddle around with it. Again, going back to the statistics on literacy, obviously the women are not as confident to use any new technology as men would be. So you have to take them slowly, and the UX, the user experience of the app, really has to make sense for the woman. So what I'd encourage anyone building any product targeting women is to go there and perhaps put a prototype in front of them. So just follow the whole design thinking process, right? First start with the research, understand what services do they need on the phone? What problem are you trying to solve for? And then put a prototype together and take it back to the person who you intend to use it, and get their feedback on even the experience itself. Perhaps they'd want a bigger button, maybe a smaller button, maybe the font needs to be a little bigger, maybe the placement of your features need to change. So always make sure that you're including them as you're designing. And then profiling, same thing. Make sure that you're capturing the gender at the point of registration, which helps you then create better products, even if you're thinking about. So our case here would be if you are looking to advertise, for example, an in-app notification, for example. When is the best time to send it? If it's a woman operating that phone, when would be the best time to send it? If you think about it, and most of them perhaps would be mothers. So early morning, perhaps not, because they're out trying to get their kids to school, right? Late evening, probably not, because they're doing bedtime with their kids. So you always have to think about those little nuances that make sense for a woman and not so much a man, and make better decisions based on that. And then lastly, we've got something we also picked up along the way, which was around training them. So because they're women, there's a way in which you approach it, which is slightly different from how you'd approach training a man in most scenarios. And these are things we saw firsthand. If you're going in and you're trying to train a lady, don't train her in the presence of her husband. Sometimes they get a bit too shy, and sometimes they don't want to say the wrong thing, so you find they're a bit uncomfortable. And then the other thing that we noticed that works very well with underserved ladies, if you're training them on new technologies, is grouping them together, and also having that train the trainer type of setup, where you train one lady who gets it and is good at it, and then just making sure that they go ahead and train others. So women learn better in groups. They're able to comfortably ask questions and be able to just get the product and even give you feedback in a group setup. That always helps. So I'll stop with the different pillars and just move on to the last bit of it, which is really the key takeaways. I bumped into this quote in MasterCard within the Women's Network, which says, "Too much of our world was designed without women in mind and without women involved." And can you imagine such products? Can you imagine the future if truly women were not included in those conversations? It won't be an inclusive product. It won't be a product that it will fail on delivery for women. And that's not what we want. Lastly, I just wanted to share some of the things that I always look up to as I'm building products as a woman. And these are the things that I stand by. One being standing out. It's important that you always have your voice heard. It's not easy. I've had my fair share of being overlooked. I've been in the market for 13 years, in the corporate world for 13 years, building products, and I've sat in rooms where no one expects you to say anything or even have an opinion. So for this, what I've learned is being able to actually speak up, right? If you've got a question, ask. Amplify your voice. Sometimes we speak your voice is too low to be heard. So amplify it if you must. Stand up if you must. So in a boardroom where, and this has happened to me before, where the boardroom people, it's just men in the boardroom. I'm the only lady, Black for that matter, and you're not being heard. If it has to get there, you can even stand up and actually make sure that they can hear you and they see you. So make sure you stand out, and stand out also in the work that you do. So it's not just a matter of talking, but also walking the walk. And then own your wins. Again, one big thing that I learned along the way is that a lot of people, as women, we're very modest. We're very, you don't want to seem like you're overshooting, or you don't want to seem like you're becoming a little too proud. So what you do is that you take the back seat and let someone else own your wins, and that has happened to me before. So what we need to learn is that I instead of we is also an option. Right. So if you literally came up with an idea, if you did the work, make sure that people give you the credit for it, and don't let other people take it. And it's very easy for them to take it. There are people who are out there who don't do much, but all they do is pick other people's win and say they're theirs. So make sure that you own your wins. The other thing is seeking mentorship and coaching. Very, very important, especially in the corporate world. Make sure that you have someone who speaks highly of you in your absence, because you won't always be in every room. So you've got to make sure that you have someone who sees your potential and can speak about it, and even when you're not present, right? And then lastly, find your tribe. This has worked for me a lot. Finding people who are have similar interest, and making sure that you can vent with them, you can have fun with them. Don't forget the people who've helped you along the way and also help others. So I think that's pretty much it on my end. I hope this has been helpful. I hope I've connected with some of you, and the learnings can be applicable in the work that you do.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Jemima. So much really to digest, and I think it's really great to see the practical applications of digital offerings that include women. So I think we all are really impressed with the stats as well. 150 million people that will have something in their belly every day if we can just include females in the agriculture sector. That's an astronomical stat. And I know Elon Musk just sent a challenge to the United Nations on what they could do with that money. So I hope that they are factoring in females in that plan as well. Yeah. So awesome. Yeah, and I think also your mentions about females in the SME sector and how they need to are they even profitable? And they might not be the owner, but they're definitely running the front of shop and and the supplies and all that kind of stuff. So it's really great to know that there are such initiatives that really help women to take part in economies in whatever sector they may be. And I'm very happy to know that you also know the South African vernac, so you know the vernacular and spaza shop. So that's really great. Good. So I do want to also give you a chance to ask your question for somebody to win a bit of time with you. So shall we go into that now?
Sure. So the question is, what is the percentage of women involved in the agricultural activities in most developing countries? What is the percentage of women involved in agricultural activities in most developing countries?
Let's keep in mind. Okay, so we have 1%, we have 20, we have 1, we have 15, 1, 45, 5, 19, 15. Okay. So Lee Hector was first with 1%. Is that correct?
No.
No.
So the larger majority of laborers are actually women. So the men own the land, but the ones who actually till, farm, manage the farms are women. So the one with the highest score would probably be
so we have NM with 45%.
think I saw
Oh, wait, we have
32,
Shamina Mutlu with 65. So
perfect,
Shamina, so okay, I know Shamina, so we'll be reaching out to her. Okay, awesome. Cool. So there were some questions. So Lee Hector asked, maybe just a question to you before we go into the next section. How can we fast forward inclusion of women in technologies, with both within companies and communities? So do you want to take a stab at that one before we go to the panel discussion?
So I was just reading the comments. Do you mind just going,
Okay, cool.
just saying that again?
Okay, cool. So the question from Lee Hector was, how can we forward the inclusion of females in technology so that they can be more represented in companies and in their communities? So what do you think is the most important things to consider?
I like that question because I always want to hear the male's point of view on it. The other day we were having a focus group with some of the engineers in our office, and just by by chance, actually a larger majority of them are men. The women, we're talking about a 10% representation of engineers alone, right? And if it's men building for women, you can only imagine that the biasness that would come with it, just by the mere fact that they're not women. So I feel, how do we do it? We need to encourage more women to take STEM subjects, right? And along the way, watch, because what I also ask the engineers is, in your computer science or programming degree that you did, how many women were in it? And most of them said about 30%. And then I asked them at the point of getting a job, right? Because now you were studying, now you've gotten a job, how many women were in your team? And most of them said maybe 15-20%. So it always drops off, right? So in terms of even earlier on, the women who would have loved to pursue engineering as a course perhaps were even larger. So maybe 50-50 at the point where you're in your secondary or high school. And then as you move to college, they're even less. And then as you move to a work scenario, it's even worse, right? So I think we always have to just encourage them at the very onset to be comfortable doing this kind of subjects, pursuing it as a career, and encourage them. So if you're a hiring manager and you are given different CVs of people who could come in and do your programming, you could also think, I want diversity, because it's only in a diverse scenario that you'll be able to build products that are inclusive.
Good, awesome. We have one last question before we go to the panel discussion from Levine or Levine. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it correctly. So when choosing a mentor, who or how should a young woman choose a mentor? And then secondly, does the gender of their mentor matter?
Good questions. So on the first one, I think along the way, the leaders in your organization or even outside that speak to some of the things that you feel are true and your true north, as well as they're up to par with your virtues. So I would say it would have to be someone that you truly believe will help you, especially in areas where you're failing. So if you're not a good public speaker, for example, and someone within the organization is so good at it, that would perhaps be the best person to approach. And they're also asking, how do you go about it? Ask. Most of the C-level suit managers are really open to having discussions with mentees, but you've got to also approach it in a way in which you don't expect too much of her. So if you are coming to me, for example, and saying, I want you to be my mentor, what I would also expect from you is come up with a strategy of how we'll go about doing it. Come up with the questions, the discussion points that you want us to talk about. Don't just come straight up and you're expecting that, I would be able to pour or share things. You've got to let me know what areas of concern do you have, how do we address it? So make it easy as possible for the mentor, but always ask. They're always available to help.
Okay, so I think you gave some really good points there. So choose mentors that are going to complement your weaknesses. And then secondly, come up with an action plan and strategy that is going to make it as easy as possible for those mentors to mentor you. So basically optimize your time with them. So
Yeah.
I hope, Shamina, you're going to optimize your time with Jemima as well. So go there were some key like discussion points when you have your one-on-one chat with her. Okay, cool. So I think, okay, so I think like we'll take a step now to the panel discussion, and then we'll wrap up with any further questions at the end there. So we can switch over to the panel discussion. Cool. So I'm going to ask Debbie to come online as well. So we had a last minute question that just popped in. Is it better to approach World Vision? So is it better to approach World Vision? I think that's an organization to do research with a community, or could you do it by yourself at a grassroots level, Jemima?
You absolutely can do it by yourself. I feel like even better for you to get that information firsthand. So certainly, absolutely, go ahead and do it. And don't even, it doesn't even have to be an agency that you recruit. You could literally walk to a shop and ask them, how is it going? How long have you been operating your shop? What are your main pain points? So you could absolutely do it on your own.
Okay. Good, great. So thank you very much for that. So I do want to remind everybody that like we do have hashtags that you can make use of for this event. So it is MomMet Women in Motion and hashtag Success Together. So if you do a post on Twitter, you can stand a chance to win one of free macaroon hampers. I have been assured they're definitely the most delicious macaroons you will ever eat, and they are really wrapped in the most beautiful packaging. So I think as we push through to the end of the year, everybody can do with a bit of extra energy and a sweet treat. So please do post. Our social media team will be checking Twitter for people posting about this event with those hashtags. So get your mobile phone out and get active and engage with us. And we thank you for doing so as well. Cool. So we do have now a chance to go into the panel discussion. And I think it's really an exciting time for us to get your insights and viewpoints as well as professionals in the digital offering and digital product space. So our first question is really, how does underrepresentation impact our future if there aren't females on those dev teams that are building those digital offerings? So Devi, Jemima, does one of you want to take a stab at answering first?
Sure. I think Jemima quite nicely covered it in her presentation, actually, showing that if you cannot relate to the person, your solution is actually substandard, and you really will not develop an adequate solution because you don't understand your market better. It is a really sad situation that we are in. I've been through a recruitment process now for 9 months looking for developers. There are very few women in the field at the moment, actually behind the keyboard coding and being able to deliver those solutions as well. And it is something that I firmly believe each of us need to start right at primary school, right when, right from the beginning. To women have a block to STEM subjects, and it's a societal thing. It's you're a girl, go play with the doll, don't play with the car. I had the privilege of a dad that was way beyond his times, that believed neither my brother or myself needed to be in certain boxes. So, you know, we need to give all girls that opportunity to know that STEM subjects are not hard. You can do them. Just because you're a girl, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do them. And I think for me, the saddest thing is having my son, who's now doing computer engineering, and there only being 4 girls in his class. It is really, really sad. And when I graduated a long time ago, there were only 4 girls in my class. And this is over 25 years later, and we still have that underrepresentation of females in STEM. So I think if every one of us encourage girls right from the time they're little and don't put gender biases on them, we'd actually have a huge amount of women coming out of these courses.
Okay, cool. Jemima, any thoughts you want to add to that question?
No, I think that's spot on what Debbie said. I think the other thing to also encourage is the hiring, right? So for example, if I am the one hiring and I'm given perhaps 10 CVs, right? Or I receive 10 CVs and 2 are women, I think it's worth considering having a woman, especially if your team is heavily male. And someone would say, why, why give extra, like if it's not worth it, why go about doing it? I think truly, if there's a skill set that it matches the skill set that you're looking for, you truly do need diversity because of the eventual products that you build. So I think for hiring managers, they certainly should put extra effort in hiring ladies. The few that are there. Yeah.
Okay. Good stuff. So we also ran the same question with some potential answers for the audience as well. So let's see what they said. So some of the outcomes might be less market relevance with less profit. So that had 10% of the response. So there was less diversity in products and services. So that's at 33%. A continued male-centric world and culture, that was also at 33%. And then financial exclusion of women was also there with 23% of the audience members saying that would happen. So maybe a further question to go a little bit deeper, Devi and Jemima, have you maybe noticed, since you are actually building real-life digital offerings, differences when there's like a predominantly or male exclusive team versus a female team? Is there, so Devi mentioned empathy and a more like view on community that females bring to the dev lifecycle and design thinking focus. Do you agree with that? And have you, what were some of those notices that you've noticed?
Yeah, so I can take that. So absolutely, right? There's a different way in which women view things compared to men. And it's down to the most simplest things like the user experience, right? So there's a way in which a man would expect something to work, and there's also another way in which a woman would expect something to work. So I feel like you absolutely must have diversity as you're building your products, just so that you can have a woman's hand in making those decisions on placement of buttons, features. Yeah, just as simple as that, I feel.
Okay, good. Devi, do you want to contribute to that?
Now, fully support Jemima. You actually just come with a completely different perspective. And I feel, diversity is not just about gender. It's all encompassing of race, etc. Because having a diverse view brings multiple thoughts into your exploration process, which then gives you a richer offering. And I think to counter that balance, because there is underrepresentation of women, I think you do then take your solution out to the product, take your solution out to the consumer. And then you need to put extra effort into getting a customer's perspective on your solution, a female's perspective on that solution. Specifically targeting them.
Okay. And I think also, human potential is such an important thing to keep in mind. So if you exclude 50% of the world and their opinions and their needs, their physical needs, which would relate in a product that somebody would buy. So that relates into a profit, into a viable MVP or minimal viable product that you can then scale and then like expand in country, across the continent, and then globally as well. So I think having those perspectives, like you say, Debbie, is quite important. I mean, just the very fact that we can do voice over IP communication, that was a female that came up with that technology. It was Marianne Croak, which is now the VP of innovation at Google. So females absolutely play a key part in shaping our digital world, but it's about giving them a platform to come up with those ideas, to spark that innovation, and then also to test that innovation and fail forward, like you were saying previously, Debbie. Good. So let's see what is the outcome from the audience on that second question as well. Good. So what are some of the ways that female voices would help build a stronger digital offering? So first, there's a more robust solution serving more customers. That was 7%. I'm surprised that nobody said better code, because the research shows that females actually make better coders with less need for testing and quality control afterwards and less bugs in their code. So like, it's interesting that nobody thinks women can code better. But okay, we'll roll with it. A more human-centric and digital world, that was at 40%. So it's good to know that we value the humanity that women bring into the development process. And then 52% said better performing teams through diverse views and debate. Good. Okay. Awesome. So what is your view, Debbie? Have you seen that women can actually code and like be at the same level as male coders? And Jemima, have you seen that as well? Does the stats pull up? Is there like a reality to that somehow?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I don't know whether it's better, but certainly at par. It should never be, you know, people shouldn't look down on it and assume that it's not great just because it's a woman who is coding.
Okay.
And we shouldn't sell ourselves short. So I don't know how the audience is set up, whether it's more male or women. Really, we shouldn't sell ourselves short. Yeah.
It's good.
Yep.
Yeah, code is just communication, right? Coding is a language. So, and women are great communicators. So it is interesting. So yes, definitely on par at least. Good. Okay, so let's go into our next question. So it's almost a two-parter in one question. So do you agree that women make most of the purchasing decisions in families? And that since they make those decisions, digital offerings built by teams with women will perform better? So it's almost a two-parter in one question. So do you agree with women making the purchasing decisions? I think, Jemima, you actually challenged that. So maybe there's some bias in that question. It depends if it's developing or developed nations, right?
Absolutely. So even in a nation like South Africa, perhaps it completely differs from city-based households versus rural-based households. So it depends on what you're buying, right, or where the household is placed.
Okay, good. So Debbie, you look at like the money markets and like digital banking and transactional banking. So any insights in terms of female consumers on in that segment?
So it is really interesting. Just personally, my money is my money, my husband's money is my money as well. So I am the purchaser of the house. But jokes aside, I think even in South Africa, females have a very strong buying power, very strong decisioning power. A very interesting study in my previous job, we were actually selling unsecured loans, and the target, when we did the analysis of the market itself, it was actually single moms in their early 30s. That was the largest volume of consumers of the product. And yet we were structuring the product not for that consumer, not for that mom who had no support, had no income coming in from the husband and stuff like that. We were not targeting her. We were not building our product for her in particular. So I feel, even in the power of female buying power is truly underestimated and not captured from a market.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's often overlooked. Like I am a big fan of another Kenyan Jemima, like with like your Greenbelt movement there, and like how like that focus was really on empowering females through agriculture and just finding seedlings, because women would look after the families, women would make sure the school fees are paid, like you said, and all that kind of stuff. So I totally agree. So we have one more question that we can like maybe pose to you as a panel. So the final question is, does female digital exclusion equate to an exclusion of female financially from the economy?
So just go by that again.
So do you think that if women can't, if there aren't digital offerings that have a focus on females, that females can develop, that would also lead to exclusion of females financially from the economy?
Yeah, so I touched a little bit on that. If for example, like just going by some of the products that we were putting out for the different pillars, agri, education, SME, if you build a product to digitize, say, my shop, right, and I'm not able to understand it or even access it because of the form factor that you've chosen, that means I'll be outside the digitization wave that's happening. And what digitization does, as I mentioned, is that it gives rich data that can be used by any financial institution to actually give you credit. And credit is a means to grow, right? So if I'm not able to be part of the digitization wave that's happening in the sector that I'm in, whether I own a school, whether I own a shop, whether I'm a farm producer, then you're already excluding me from financial services, which is, so yes, absolutely, I agree.
Okay, good. Awesome. And then Debbie, would you like to add some thoughts to the point?
I firmly believe if we not building for inclusion, it results in the actual exclusion from females in the economy, and it's an absolute disservice to women, and even worse so to impoverished women. How do we uplift them from where they are? And this digitization and the inclusion of them allows us to change their economic status. So it's extremely important.
Okay, good. Yes, and I think I think it's an exciting time. So Africa is a continent that has rich mobile adoption, but is it always in the female's hands is the question. And coding and technology education, STEM education is democratized now. So you can go on any website like code.org. There is like Tinkercad for 3D printing from Autodesk. There are so many like digital avenues that are free that people can learn coding and robotics, and there's YouTube channels that can get kids into it. But it's again, is do they have the access, and is it in the hands of girls over boys? Like we know from Jemima, if a kid has to be pulled out of school, it's going to be the boy that's going to continue that schooling career. Is it the boy that's going to get the cell phone as well? Then most likely, right? So
Yeah.
so that's some interesting points. We are getting close to the end. I did see a chat come up from Sumaya Amdale that said organizations should provide more support to STEM-based education at a primary school level, focusing especially on financially disadvantaged schools, and donate state-of-the-art science labs. And I am very proud to be a momentum maker at Momentum Metropolitan, because from a corporate social responsibility point of view, that is exactly what we focused on. Skills development and youth unemployment is the primary focus of our CSR leg of our business. And I've been fortunate in working with some of those organizations like We Think Code and Chimologong projects and others. So great stuff. So any closing thoughts from you, Jemima or Devi, on a digital future and the roles that females can play?
Yes, so for me, I think it's important that even the younger girls see people like us, Devi and myself, leading digital, whether you're a co-founder or you've grown to a CEO level of a technology company. I think those are the small, it doesn't have to be direct, but the minute I see that Jemima Kariuki could actually be the CEO of Momentum or Google or whatever it is, right? I'll start seeing myself in her, right? And it's similar to like in football. Only when we started seeing African footballers in those, big leagues and doing so well, did the younger kids back at home start thinking, hey, football could actually be for me. So I've got to see myself represented in the grand scheme of things, like in this organizations, in this found, new products or new companies that are founded and they're unicorns. I've got to see women there for me to feel like it's actually possible for me to be to grow into that. So I think that's ultimately where we want to end up.
Great stuff. Devi, any closing thoughts from you?
I feel that no one is going to change the platform for the future. We have to make that change ourselves, and we have to be the ones that go out there. Even if it's one child's life that you actually change, even if it's one little girl that you sponsor through school, or you sit down and have that conversation with her and make her believe the world's her oyster. That is all that you really need to do. You need to make little girls believe it's possible. And by making little girls believe it's possible, you then have an army going out into that digital minefield.
Okay, great stuff. So thank you for those closing thoughts. We are going to directly contact the winners from the social media campaign for those macaroons. So hopefully you'll get a contact if you did post and tweet out like a message of encouragement to us. We thank you for that. We are also going to send out a little short survey, 2-3 questions, just to get recommendations for speakers of next year. So we want to hear from you as participants and audience members. Who would you like to hear from in next year's Women in Tech event? So it's been an absolute pleasure, Jemima and Devi. It's been great getting insights and learnings from you. I think we have a lot to take away, and with the world moving towards digital increasingly, we know now that we need to make sure that female representation is there all the way through as well. So thank you very much again for your insights.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Great. And you as the audience, we really value your time. If you are watching us on YouTube as well, thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate you. And please stay tuned. Like next year, we're going to have more events like this and more engaging topics around technologies and the roles that women can play in the industry. So have a great last few weeks till we get to the December holidays, and have a great rest at the end of the year, and make sure that you make the most of your time with your families. So have a great day further. Tuning out. Thank you very much, everybody.